All right. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining this show today. I am absolutely delighted to have Sudarsan Rao, the co founder and CEO of Soxo. I hope I pronounced it correctly, as
Absolutely.
my guest today. He's built an amazing platform, which is actually very different from what we typically think about social media platforms or other kinds of platforms for marketing. So I got curious as to what they're doing and how are they doing it and why are they doing it. So I was hoping that Sudarshan would give us some perspective on that today. So Sudarshan, welcome.
Thanks, Yogesh. Thanks for getting me on this call.
No worries at all. So why don't we get started? Let's start with the basic question. Tell me about you first. Who are you? What's your background? And how did you come about coming up with this idea for your company?
Well, I've been an accidental professional since beginning. Started in financial markets and moved into tech and now into martech. So this particular venture of Soxo has been my third startup venture and started 6 years ago, along with my co-founders Mukund and Rahul. And I have an interesting and a very uh, committed team that has been building this particular product over the last 6 years.
6 years. Wow. So tell us about what you're doing.
Right. So Soxo was uh, inspired by the context of how social media was evolving as a channel
Mhm.
and as a digital alternative for search and email. And what really led us into believing in that this is a good solution, um, which we can build around the context of social as a medium. We saw five key trends that were been going on. That is how social media was being adopted by individuals. They found got a newfound freedom to go out and express their thoughts and share content, right? Show that they can actually put in their thoughts on top of others' content and get them amplified, get the reach, get that 2 minutes of fame wherever possible.
Mhm.
So we saw that evolving trend of how people really engaged social media. And
Mhm.
then what we did not see happening was how the brands were going to use it. And brands had a very limited context of publishing content on social media on the brand pages. Uh, and they had to go for paid marketing and then drive a lot of campaigns through paid social campaigns. But what we found lacking was when brands did not have an organic content social media approach. We realized that the organic content engagement was key for driving the trust and authenticity of the brands, while the paid campaigns will help them reach the target audience for interventional marketing.
Mhm.
Um, and we realized that the brands are also not engaging their own trusted stakeholders, which are the employees or partners or customers, in driving that content amplification or their message on social media. And the most important thing was brands were getting exposed on social media. So in email and search, they were behind the scenes, whereas on social media, they were put forth in front of the consumers and the followers and the fans, and they were getting noticed and engaged on every move.
Mhm.
And we thought that creating the brand share of voice and more importantly a positive word of mouth is important for companies to
Mhm.
drive their stories and their narratives on social media, and that required a very strong influencer voice that was the stakeholders. The employees and other external stakeholders of the company are very positive influencers when it comes to content amplified on social, and
Mhm.
that was the context on how we built the foundation for success.
Amazing. So you've touched on quite a few topics here. And I wanted to deep dive into a few of them. But first, let's start with the concept of how does it actually work. So explain to us the process. So is it a platform? How does the platform actually work? Let's start with that first, and we can then go into the
Right.
nitty gritty.
Right. So there is a lot of investment that goes on brand content or
Hmm.
also pulling in, discovering or curating content which is relevant to the brand for
Hmm.
all its people. Now,
Hmm.
the investment on brand content just stays on their website, or if it's going to social media, it just stays on their brand pages. Unfortunately, brand pages do not get the organic free reach, right?
Hmm.
So free reach was not available on social media. They turned it off many years ago and they forced brands to pay for it. Now realize that if we provide a system which allows us to discover all the brand content that they have created and all the useful relevant non-brand content relevant for their business or their users, we thought we can bring a system that can bring all this content to discover, curate, and moderate that content to decide who in the business will be interested in learning what's happening around the trends and in the industry or in the profession.
Hmm.
And our platform pulls in content from various different content sources, both brand and non-brand content, allows the moderators to decide what content can be given to different kind of users on the platform.
Hmm.
So once the content is published to all the different employees or stakeholders of the company, they get to know the real-time information of what the brand is messaging on their own or non-brand content, relevant content that comes to them in terms of industry trends. Then it activates the employees to use the app or the website or the portal that we offer to them to put in their thoughts and then share the content to their network that enables them to create the visibility or the personal branding, or more importantly, helps in driving all the 8 key tenets about employee advocacy has been built for. So it's
Amazing.
a curation, discovery, moderation, publishing, and then sharing of content. And then it connects all the dots. It tracks and measures every engagement of the content that happens on social media and gives the metrics and dashboard.
So it's interesting because as you're describing, your platform, I start thinking about like LinkedIn. Like a lot of people post on LinkedIn, for example, right? So do you see LinkedIn as a potential competitor, and how are you then differentiating versus what they're doing versus what you're doing?
Well, we actually work on top of all the social channels, so which means if
Mhm.
brand has a presence on social media for their brand pages,
Yeah,
uh, we help bring that brand page content from LinkedIn or other sources and give it to the users, because employees are omnipresent on social media and they're already having conversations with their potential
yeah,
followers or even prospects
right.
or new hires. So the ability to get all this content and using LinkedIn or even other channels to amplify further,
Hmm.
it's considered as user generated content as an employee shares. When an employee shares the content or a user shares the content, it gets a higher organic reach and visibility. So we actually help brands who are already having an engagement on the social channels to further get a organic reach through their employees.
Amazing. So you're kind of like putting it on steroids in a way. It's what I'm kind of like taking away as the
Yeah,
message.
steroids in a way without paying too much.
Exactly, I get it. I totally get it. So you talked about employees as one group, right? So um, and you're if I understood you correctly, they're being fed information from the company, of the topic areas that are of vital importance to the company. Employees can take that content, they can personalize it perhaps, and then they can push it out
Yes.
onto their channels, right? That's kind of like the way it works, correct?
Absolutely. So it's not
Okay.
going to be just one way, just the brand gives the content and then they share it. So we
Uh-huh.
give the opportunity for the employees to actually put their thoughts on top of the content and then drive
Mhm.
that to social media or also create content. So most of the employees are subject matter experts and they
Mhm.
are thought leaders, and they do create a lot of content, so which means this platform allows them
Mhm.
to actually use their system to send it across to multiple channels. So if you're doing it only on LinkedIn, it stays on LinkedIn, whereas here if you create it, it
Yeah.
goes across all the channels and they get to know what has been their reach or engagement and how it has helped drive their own personal brand,
Mhm.
besides helping the company to get its own value of employer branding or lead gen and stuff like that.
I can totally relate to that because I remember in a couple of roles that I had, in the last 5 or 10 years, where I wanted to push out content for work that my team had done, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and like I felt like I had to like not only write the content, but I had to like think about everybody who was involved and have a picture or two or something to push out basically. But it was a lot of work, and I was thinking like, my gosh, I wish there was an easier way to do that. And it seems like you've kind of like cracked that issue for me in a way.
Absolutely. So I tell brands your influencers are already on social media. They are
Mhm.
employees. They're more trusted.
Yeah,
Their voice is more authentic, right? And they are experts on their domain.
yeah.
If a particular customer is looking forward for content on social media, and if it comes to your own employees, it has a better authenticity and engagement. So we are just trying to help that particular process.
So you talked about authenticity, and I actually have two questions here. So let's talk about authenticity first, and I want to ask an issue later. So talk to me about authenticity. How why do you say that basically?
Yeah, so it's easy today to actually just get content from anywhere and then get it posted as your content. But if
Hmm.
it comes from the voice of the employees and they're subject matter experts, right? And then when they are going to share a company content, it means they're actually invested into that particular aspect of what the brand wants to communicate to
Mm.
their prospects or followers or connections on social media. It's not just they just share it through multiple sources. We don't know what's the original source of content. Whereas
Yeah.
here, it's actually created, curated, and it's thought through in terms of their audience on their network. So, which means the employees put in a lot of effort in making sure that they are able to connect to uh, through their connections,
Yeah.
but giving the context of their brand's voice through them.
Got it. So, are there any, like, early examples or use cases that you've seen, your customers, share back with you in terms of how does it work for them, and are there success stories that you can already share?
Yeah, so one of the key aspects which we have been observing in the last 5, 6 years, most of our customers are from the B2B industry. And if you take a typical B2B industry like IT, information technology services,
Hmm.
it's a cross-border relationship. So the companies need to actually drive a lot of things just beyond just saying that we can develop this particular product or service for you. The
Hmm.
first and foremost thing, what social media helps these brands to do is actually drive a strong employer branding. Now, most of our clients, if they want to reach out to their clients, they want to position themselves as a great place to work. And it's a great
Hmm.
culture of innovation and then a strong place for employee experience and engagement. Now,
Right.
employer branding is a very key intangible value of brands, which actually makes the customers feel comfortable to engage with the partners and say, okay, this is a great team and they're subject matter experts. They are communicating, they seem to know what they're talking. And this is the company which encourages a strong employee, experience. And that's a very fundamental thing for companies to actually position on social media. You can actually keep doing paid marketing, but then finally the buyer is actually looking at the team which is going to work with them. They want to know
Hmm.
the people behind the company and not just the ads. So they really want to engage with the people who know what they're selling, who know what they're actually committing in terms of their capabilities. So employer branding is a key target function there. Then of course the personal branding as well. So the people are also given a lot of empowerment to say that you can go ahead, talk about the topics that relates to our business, make
Hmm.
the prospects comfortable. Another key aspect that we see is social hiring. Most brands want to attract the best talent. The best talent is going to work for the best person. And the best person is available on social media. And I would like to see, okay, this is the person I'd like to work with and learn. So
Hmm.
I'm actually choosing the person before choosing the brand. So
Hmm.
if you empower the employees to create a strong personal brand and also the employer branding, you know that you've solved the problem of resources or the people, right?
Hmm.
So that is a very key significant aspect what we are seeing with brands which are engaged with us.
So you've raised up an interesting point, and I want to just like play a little bit of devil's advocate for a second, right? So I could see a lot of companies um, saying, well, wait a minute, if I start having my employees share their stories and I show them that they're subject matter experts, somebody might poach them. Or,
Mm.
I don't know how my employees will actually talk about the company, and, they may talk negatively about the company, right? And especially with, the way things have been going over the last couple of years with downsizing and things like that, there's a lot of positive, neutral, and negative feelings, on the employer side and on the employee side, right? So how do you address that? Because I could see that being a potential barrier for companies to wanting to adopt your platform, right? So could you speak to that?
Yes. So it involves a combination of fear or misconception or a lack of proper program
Yeah.
to engage with their employees first and make them feel comfortable that as long as they follow a social media policy guideline in
Hmm.
terms of what they want to communicate on behalf of the brand, that fear is taken off. So if you're going to put the tool in front of the users without a guideline or a policy, that's an issue. And it's a program that has to be initiated. So platform only will do its job of trying to curate and
Hmm.
amplify and measure it. But then the program initiates the discipline or the opportunity, or more importantly, as you say, the friction points are removed by a
Hmm.
strong program that enables and empowers the employees to feel we are being valued. We are allowed to go out and express our thoughts, which is going to help us as well as the business. So it's a culture that is required. So it's mostly companies which have not invested in that particular culture function. Then they're scared. Okay, what's going to the employee going to say, or is if he's going to be poached?
Yeah.
Certain things are not. going to stop. People are going to be talking on social media. Employees are going to be engaging on social media. They will move
Hmm.
if they are not seeing the value or the recognition their own brand gives them. So if a brand is giving that engagement, they will definitely go to the part competitor. So I believe that I tell my clients, trust them. Your employees are going to feel comfortable if you're giving them the opportunity, empowerment, empower them with the voice, because they are the faces and voices on social media, right?
Right.
Brand by itself does not have a persona. So all the employees are the personas, and different kinds of personas with different intelligence. You're projecting them on social media. And if you empower them
Hmm.
with a strong program, I don't see a reason why it should not, it should be a problem for brands to adopt, I mean, use employees to amplify content.
I love that because you're right. You know that companies that have not invested in their employees, or they've, you know, they seek control. I call these things like, the old rules of normal,
Yeah,
in terms of how companies were working. But in the digital world that we're in today, and especially in the world of AI and things like that, you know um, we need to write new rules in terms of how we work, right? How we work
absolutely.
as employees, and how we interact with our employers, and how we communicate through all these different social media platforms. So I'm totally with you on that. I'm curious, as you talked about employee branding being one place, but there was another thing you also mentioned. I want you to just expand on that a bit. You talked about in the context of customers, and they're buying a service or a product, and they want to know the team. Could you speak about that? Because that goes into to the heart of demand generation, and to the
Yes,
heart of lead generation in a way, right? So I'm just curious
yes.
to hear your thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
Well, that's another misconception I want to, I mean, remove. Um, a lead gen doesn't happen just because you put a paid marketing campaign and hoping that the particular copy actually attracts a customer to buy your product or a service. And
Hmm.
as I said, uh, in advocacy, if an employee is confident about the content they are sharing about a topic or a subject matter,
Hmm.
the person on the other side, if it's a potential prospect, they're going to look at the person and the capabilities of the company and the team, right? Which means the content actually creates a very qualitative traffic or a qualitative visitor going to their site and then converting there, right? And the
Hmm.
more importantly, it can be attributed to the user who shared the content and say, this particular subject matter expert actually drove this content and got on a prospect to get interested, and then who actually came back to us and say, we'd like to engage with you. Now, in
Hmm.
most cases, if it's a direct attribution is possible if we are able to do it through social media. But sometimes this kind of conversation that happens or engagement that happens also drives indirect attribution through search because you're driving a discovery as a user. So lead gen
Hmm.
is definitely a qualitative context of traffic, and qualitative aspect of lead gen is definitely possible if employees are able to engage, share content, and engage with potential prospects there,
Hmm.
right? So I tell most of my customers, it's not always trying to get a lead generation for a customer alone. It may be for a partner. It could be for a hire. So you are definitely going to see all these different voices with different topics are going to drive very qualitative main traffic, and I mean, help both in demand and gen as well as lead gen there.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So if a company wanted to engage with you, right, there's almost like a user journey that's involved here, right? In terms of, do they have policies in place, or do they have,
Yeah.
content that they want to get employees to engage in? Maybe there's even training involved. I'm just like spitballing here a little bit, but what are you seeing, and how does that work in that context? I'm just curious now.
In our case, when we started, we also made a lot of mistakes of trying to engage with customers who did not have a strong content policy or a
Hmm.
content methodology or a content cadence, and
Hmm.
they did not have a strong internal policy of educating their users how best to use social media,
Hmm.
or an institutional program in terms of how do you engage, I mean, all the stakeholders to come on to an advocacy program. We were
Hmm.
curious to sell, we sold, and then we realized they didn't have these basic tenets, right?
Hmm.
So then as we matured and we understood, so we've been telling them, you need to have a strong program. It starts with understanding what kind of content cadence you need to set for it, because
Hmm.
when you have a platform, which means you need to keep feeding the platform with interesting content for internal users to engage, which is the employees to engage first. If
Hmm.
they really engage with the internal, I mean, feed, and then you enable them to go out and share that content to their network, which means you need to also do on two things. There is certain content they would like to do it themselves because it drives their own context with the conversation with their connections on social media, also their personal branding. And in
Yeah.
some contexts, they would like to get, a bit of reward. For example, I'm going to amplify the content. My company is looking for more hires. I'm going to send it to my network, and somebody's going to come there because I'm driving the value for the business. Then we also bring the aspect of gamification inside. So we want
Hmm.
to show that users are engaged in the platform, and as they engage better and they give value to to their engagement onto the business, there is a badge, there's a leaderboard, and there is a reward point function. So they also get rewarded for certain
Hmm.
actions or call to actions or conversions that they actually bring to the business.
Hmm.
So we have built the whole layer in such a way that it is engaging. It's
Hmm.
not just for content for consumption, it is also for engaging with the platform, engaging with the audience on social media, driving the value back to the business. And
Hmm.
all this is measured, and then we reward them.
Well, there are some companies, for example, they offer rewards to employees if they're able to find specific kind of talent, right? So,
Yes.
there's a monetary value associated with that. So I'm just curious if that's something that you've considered in terms of connecting with the HR teams or the talent acquisition teams
Yeah,
on
they
on
are
that
doing
particular
that. Absolutely, they're doing that because the social hiring approach is much less expensive than
side. Hmm.
going through any other sources.
Yeah.
So we definitely tell our clients to use the context to drive, value through the employees to find the best hires. Because as I said, the best hire is looking out at their potential employee as a manager to work under, right?
Hmm.
So are the best place to work as in terms of the culture or the employer branding experience that they are delivering to the market.
Hmm.
At the same time, we also tell them employees can become prisoner of rewards. So you should be careful in terms of calibrating how you want to pay and for what context you want to pay rewards,
Yeah.
but it should be mostly voluntary, that
Hmm.
they should believe that by getting on this platform, they
Hmm.
get first and foremost, what is in it for me as an employee is your personal branding is definitely going to shine. You're going to be heard, you're going to be engaged, right? And then that gives an empowerment and experience of being in the business. Second, you're going to help the business in driving the culture of innovation or the culture of experience that you're driving and
Hmm.
giving a feel for others to come and join in the company. So these are very strong intangible value. The
Hmm.
tangible value is the social selling aspects, like giving the content to the front end teams to engage with prospects with the right information,
Hmm.
also helping the brand awareness because of the content that gets amplified by the employees.
Hmm.
It just multiplies because you have 1,000 employees or 100 employees, each of them having a few thousand connections. It's definitely the percentage reach of organic is much higher if it's an employee who shares content, which
Hmm.
means you're driving brand awareness and marketing. And plus, more importantly, you're driving frequency. So you're driving the frequency of content, which means you need frequency of content to drive brand visibility and awareness,
Hmm.
right? So that is very important function. And finally, a positive word of mouth, right?
Hmm.
There are so many sequences and events that happens when brands are actually getting badgered. The best people to stand for it are the employees who know probably, yes, if it's wrong, they actually chide their brands themselves, or they actually stand up for the brands. In most cases, we've
Hmm.
seen both kind of scenarios happening. A company with a strong brand advocacy program, you will see the employees will really stand with the brand.
I wonder if this would have helped Bud Light last year when they were going through their challenges. I'm just curious. Do you have any thoughts on that?
There was a similar incident. I'm sure this will relate to most of the Indian audience. Maggie, the
Hmm.
Nestle Maggie noodles, when a lot of hue and cry was there about people saying that it's got lead in it and it's not good for children.
Hmm.
The ladies, the female employees of Nestle in India, they actually started driving campaigns saying that we are good with that, our children are good with that, we are eating that, there's no problem with that. So which
Hmm.
means it was a complete positive word of mouth that was generated out of the
Hmm.
employees who stood up for the brand because they produced the product,
Hmm.
they believed in what they were doing it, so they drove the trust to the consumers to say you don't have to worry about it because we are eating the same and we're giving the same to our children. So definitely it's a powerful statement for brands if they can really engage with their employees.
I should have mentioned this all the way at the top, but for the audience, we actually have a global audience watching this today. So we have people from around the world. Thank you for joining. And I think the example you gave from India, I think is fantastic because you know there are so many instances, whether it's intentional or unintentional, when brands just have issues, right? So you need to have a way to counter the voices that are negative, especially when it's unfounded or when it's actually not true,
Yes,
right? So
yes.
you need people to stand up for you, and the best group would be your employees at the end of the day, I would imagine, right? So
Absolutely. And if
amazing.
you extrapolate that, the same thing goes well with partners and customers, and they also stand
Mhm.
strong with the brand on social media in most cases,
Yeah.
because partners are invested into the aspect of the business and the brand.
Hmm.
Customers definitely, and strong customer advocates who have gone beyond just the loyalty function, become strong fans of the brand. They
Hmm.
definitely stand up with the brand on social media. Now, as I said, engaging all these different stakeholders requires a system or a methodology and a structured approach, and
Hmm.
that's where platforms like ours, and interesting platforms like Sox are there around the advocacy programs on both employee, partner, and customer advocacy. I think it's we are seeing the traction of most brands trying to use these particular platforms to get their share of voice on social media.
So one area that I spend a lot of time on, and I'm actually doing some work with the University of South Carolina on this as well, because I teach there, as you know, is that brands that are that are operating in stigmatized industries, right? Think about cannabis or others. There are a lot of healthcare brands that that have stigma associated with the product category, right? Um, or even like consumer packaged goods companies. Think about plant-based meats, or think about
Yes.
even like brands that have sugar in it today, right? There's a stigma being built up around that, right? So what are your thoughts on how a platform like yours could help
Yeah.
those kinds of companies that are there are lots of misconceptions out there about the
Yeah.
product, about the category, maybe even about the company, right?
Yeah.
So could you just expand and explain how would you approach that, or how would you guide a company as if they wanted to use your platform from that perspective?
Yeah, so industries are businesses, what you explained, which I consider as social impact businesses, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
they have a great intent or a narrative, but it is not often been heard or read by many people,
Hmm.
right? And of course, I see the websites of all these companies. It's nice. They really explain the scientific aspects behind it, but then unfortunately, not many people really know about it. So it's the information or knowledge, I mean, that is not available. So that's they have their own perception about all this particular, I mean, context. So this is where social really helps, because people who believe in this aspect of social impact, they are the best influencers, and if they are engaged to actually get this knowledge out on social media, and the discoverability of those kinds of ideas, or information is very key. Social definitely is a big push there. Then
Hmm.
later the people discover through search. So search social has a very strong impact on search, because the brands are discovered on social, and then they are then search for specific context on search engines, right? So
Hmm.
that's what I say. It's difficult to do the direct attribution, but indirectly, ideas like what you said, including, climate change kind of
Hmm.
conversations,
Yeah.
these kind of social impact ventures, right? They have to definitely adopt, besides their own employees and stakeholders, also people in their industry to put their voices around these concepts, and it'll definitely reach out to them.
Right. So, thanks. That's a great example, and that really helps clarify. So, how do you measure this? I'm just curious about measurement, because that's going to be the question of the day for any CMO or CFO who's
Yeah.
listening into this conversation right now.
Right.
So,
And that's also the scary one, Yogesh, because we can measure literally everything on social media or digital footprint,
yeah.
right? Every interaction. So right from our platform, what they do in terms of the views or in terms of the sharing they do, the time they spend, the dwell time as they call.
Hmm.
But again, from a privacy context, we don't want to expose a lot. We don't want to measure a lot. So we give what is contextual to the business to say, this is what your team is doing. We anonymize a lot of things. So we give fundamental information that's required on our platform. Then
Hmm.
what happens on social media? Most social media channels have evolved, and they actually give very relevant information in terms of the engagement metrics, in terms of the likes or comments and reposts the particular content shared by an employee gets.
Hmm.
So employee engagement on the platform and employees content engagement on social media across various platforms, and then what happens after that. So once somebody clicks on the content and goes into the website of the company or a specific landing page with a particular call to action,
Hmm.
we can track everything. All these digital footprint actions can be tracked all through the right the holy grail, what marketers want is the call to action and conversion,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
including the user attribution. So conversion and attribution is also trackable, and you can relate it to the user who did this and reward the user. So which means every foot touch point of the content in our platform, on social media, on the website of the business is measured, and then it is actually tracked.
Amazing, amazing. But with all the changes that are coming with, a cookieless world and things like that, we hear about all these things, right? And it's becoming a reality. It seems like right now. How are you future proofing your business, and where do you see all of this going in the next few years?
Yeah. I sincerely believe that, as you said, the deprecation of cookies is an advantage for social because they will have to now really put in a lot of effort in driving content through social channel out there.
Hmm.
And we are saying what I call as the next phase of social media because it's a new medium, just been there for 10 plus years. We have seen different behaviors and adoption. We also seeing the social media changing the ways of trying to engage with the users and audiences and kind of information they want to provide within the privacy context,
Hmm.
right? So we see that brands will understand the value of social media is not as just another medium to throw in ads and then get customers, but continuous engagement and driving the authenticity and trust with the engage with the consumers, giving relevant information through various voices, and it's not just a brand talking to the audience because on social, interestingly, the most engagement happens for content coming through the voices of the brand, which are the employees and partners and
Hmm.
customers. The brand content itself does not get any engagement.
Hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, Sudarshan, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for enlightening me and our audience on this topic. You've touched on a lot of things. From explaining your brand's value proposition and how it can benefit companies from employee branding to lead generation and demand generation issues that companies may be thinking about from an adoption perspective, all the way to how do you actually execute, right? So this has been phenomenal. So thank you so much. um, I wanted to just say a couple of things. I did mention earlier we have a global audience, which is phenomenal. Sudarshan's company is based out of India. In fact, you are my first guest from outside the US, so thank you for being my first. I just wanted to say that as well. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking to Dr. Gerard Luschalder, who is the founder of the Nudge Lab. He's actually another international member, if you want to call it that. He's based out in the Netherlands. And I'll be speaking to him about behavioral change and how you can think about nudging consumers or employees or anybody based on some principles around behavioral sciences that can be adopted. It might be something that you might also want to think about from your perspective,
Absolutely.
Sudarshan. So thank you,
Absolutely.
everybody. That's going to be on March 28th, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, it's March 28th, same time. See you then. Thank you
Yeah.
and
Thank
goodbye.
you, and thanks to the audience for the opportunity.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.
All right. 1 second. There we go.